Well, it's time to get back on the project. It's been about 5 months. The last thing I did was the cowling. That was back in May of this year. It's now the first week in October. And the weather's starting to break. We're starting to get cooler mornings, cooler evenings. Still a little warm to come in the hangar during the day, but October is kind of that's when our season begins here in Arizona. So I wanted to pick up where I left off. I wanted to finish the cowling. Where I still have stuff to do is I got to cut the access door for the oil filler, and I need to get all that marked out. I'm just going to use the stock hinge that RANS provides. I know some other builders have done that other kind of hidden hinge, which is really nice, but I think I'm just going to go for keeping it simple, use what they gave me, and get that done. So I got to get into the manuals and kind of read up on that process. After taking 4 months off, I got to get that momentum going back again. And when you take time off like that and you start back on the project, it's amazing, at least for me anyway. It's amazing how it just takes a little bit to kind of get that train moving. Whereas when you're working on it for 6 months straight or longer, I mean, you're just day by day, you know exactly what you need to do next. And I'm kind of at this point where I'm like, where do I even begin? So oil door, that's something that is just a nice little simple, I say simple, a not super involved task that I can do that can kind of help get me back into the groove of things. And then from there, the next things I need to start doing, you can see I've got the windshield just kind of placed up here. Windshield's the next big task. And in order to do that, I got to get the wings on. The wings are done, the struts are done, everything's ready pretty much for the wings to go on. I've got to cut the dog bone pieces here yet and measure all that out. But effectively, the wings are not that far off from being put on. So that'll be the next big step. And then from there, once the windshield's on, then it's just like rigging and like final things. So there's no reason I can't have this thing done in 4 months. We'll see how that actually goes. But anyways, I'm going to get into the manual and start looking at what do I need to do for this oil filler door. Before I get into the episode of what we're going to do on the airplane next, I just wanted to make a quick mention. Everything that I have shot in the series for this build until now has been shot on my iPhone 14 Pro Max. And I just finally upgraded from the 14 to the 17. So I have an iPhone 17 Pro Max. Everything going forward now is going to be shot on that. I will say the quality of the camera on the 17 versus the 14 is noticeable. So I'm real excited to kind of see what the output's going to look like. But I didn't go for the 15, the 16. I kind of waited, and I'm at the 17 now. So I just wanted to throw that out there for any of you tech guys that are interested in what camera I've been using. I've actually had that question asked a couple times, and I've never really addressed it. It's always been iPhone 14 Pro Max. From here forward, iPhone 17 Pro Max. Oh, sorry, one more thing. If it sounds like I'm talking with a little bit of a lisp, that's because last month I started Invisalign straightening treatment on my teeth. I have had some teeth that have been grinding on other teeth that have been causing some issues. I've had to get a couple crowns because of it. And the dentist finally said, you need to get your teeth aligned. They weren't terrible, but they just weren't perfect. So I'm wearing them right now, and they do kind of make me talk with a little bit of a lisp. So if that's what you hear, that's what's going on. Well, I got the manuals out and did a little bit of reading. Started looking at some of the drawings, exploded view here of all the parts, components for the oil door, dimensions for marking everything out, and just reading through the text. I needed to go find the parts. And remember what I was saying just a couple minutes ago about getting that momentum going again? Well, part of taking 4 or 5 months off at a time is trying to find your parts again. I try to take care in putting things in certain spots so that I know when I get back on the project, I'll know where things are. But I'm telling you something, this took me about 40 minutes to find the hinge. I looked everywhere. I looked twice, and I could not find it. And finally, on the third time, in a bin that I had already looked at, I found it. So, and the oil door parts, the frame and the door itself, they took me a good 25 minutes to find. And that's just because I haven't been in here, haven't been in the flow. And these are the reasons why you lose your motivation to come back in here, because you know you're just going to be fighting yourself trying to find stuff. But here we are. I've got the parts. So next I want to go ahead and looks like I need to measure out where this is going to go. It looks pretty straightforward. I think really the most critical item here is just making sure that when I actually do the cutout on the cowling, that it's exact and nice and clean to those lines, because you do want to have a nice, clean, tight fit there. And you don't want any weird gaps or anything. So other than that, this doesn't appear to be too difficult of a task. I might eat those words later, but for now, that's where I'm at. So I got the door here, and what I've done is I've just used an old roll of some polyfilm and just kind of loosely formed it over that. And I made a little bit of a tighter radius at the front edge than the rear in order to get it to sit right. And I kind of slightly overbent this edge, because then when the hinge and everything holds this in place and this thing closes, this will tend to kind of pull itself down tight and have a nice tight edge here. So I've basically got the shape I want right now. I'm sure I'll tweak this a little bit later. But what I need to do is I need to mark a center line all the way down it. And I'm going to use these two holes as reference for the center. Get my combination square, my combo square. And just strike me a line. That'll be my center line. Now what I can do is go over to the cowling, and I think I'm going to get my laser out, shoot it on that 12-inch line going straight out, and then overlay this line on that, and I should have a good placement. Okay, I've got my laser projecting a line. It's a little bit difficult to see, but you can make it out right there. That's at my 12 inches over from the center. And I've got some little hash marks that I've marked on the cowling 1 5/8 from the aft edge. So I can go ahead and lay this on place, get that laser lined up with my line that I drew, get this edge lined up, and that's effectively where this thing's gonna sit, right there. So what I can do here is I can take my pencil and I can trace around this, and then that's gonna be my cut. All right, that's my opening. That's what'll need to get cut. I will, of course, triple check this before I do any cutting. I guess at this point I'll be able to, or I should take off the top cowling here. I just want to make sure that, based on what I'm seeing here, my oil filler should be somewhere right here, if the measurements are correct. I'll just want to double check that, make sure that that is in fact what I'm supposed to do. I'm sitting here looking at this, and boy, I would really love to cut this piece out and use this as the door. And I get why they do it this way with the aluminum piece, because when you cut this, you really want to like cut inside the line, then come in and finish with your Dremel wheel sanding drum and get just exactly. So like that makes sense. But boy, if you could just make a perfect cut with a thin blade all the way around here and just kind of polish up the edges, I think you could make this piece work. So I'm sitting here trying to think of how I can cut this accurately. The thing is, you got one shot at this. If you screw up and you cut oversize, you've kind of screwed yourself for this piece. So I'm just sitting here kind of thinking about this. Let me run some ideas through my mind, and we'll see what I end up doing. So I made an attempt, and there's just no easy way to cut this out and still retain this carbon fiber piece. I tried as best as I could, and you know, the radiuses is where you're gonna have the issues. And I just couldn't. I tried it with a small little cutting wheel, just kind of nipping away at it, and it's just gonna leave too much of a gap, I think. So I'll just go ahead and cut it like I would to install the aluminum piece. And I'll still use the diamond wheel, because that's really a really good way to cut this. It cuts so cleanly. So it was worth a shot. You know, ideally, if I had this on a fixture, oh man, this is making me wonder. I could Well, it's already too late. I've kind of gouged this corner. What I was getting at here is I could fixture this up, and I could probably cut this on my CNC router, and not with just my 3-axis, you know, follow, come around here, up and over. But I've already kind of hacked away at this, and that would be a lot more work. I'd have to make like support, and yeah, it could be done if you wanted to, but I'm not going to put in that effort. So back to the original plan. I've got my opening pretty much finished out. I filed it, block sanded the edges straight, radius the edges just a little bit so it's not sharp on the inside and on the outside. And my panel, oops, goes this way. My panel fits in there quite nicely. Pretty consistent gap all the way around. It's hard to get this, you know, down to the 10,000th of an inch perfect, but this will do. So then what I did is I took this plate, I matched up the holes where the quarter turns go, right there and there. And then what I did was I traced with a pencil around the perimeter of the panel, which gave me that line right there. That way when I install this, I know that I'm gonna run that line up to the edges like so. And then what I'll do is I'll match drill through the backside these holes for the rivets. I'm not really, to be honest with you, I haven't really been reading the manual. I don't even know if that's the order or what they say to do. I'm just doing what just makes the most sense here. Hopefully that doesn't bite me. Why am I not reading the manual? I don't know. This just seems too easy to just go the way I think it's supposed to go. That has bit me in the past, so maybe I will read it and make sure before I actually start drilling anything. But that's that. What I used to cut it was my little tiny diamond wheel. I say little tiny, it's about 3/4 inch, maybe an inch diameter. And I just came real close, I was probably 20 thousandths off of the line I wanted to be at. And then when I came to the corners, I was just real careful not to bite in too much to it. And then finished it out with the sanding drum, and then just a little bit of hand sanding with some 220. And that got me where I want to be. I did scan through the manual, and I noticed one thing I want to do before I match drill this to the inside is I want to match drill the holes for back through this hinge so that I can at least get that placed. And what I did was I kind of set it here, and what I found was if I had just a hairline of that edge of that hinge showing, that kind of lined me up. I put the oil door on. You can see I scribed 2 little holes here on this part of the hinge. I wanted to make sure, let me just show you this way. I wanted to make sure that my holes were going to be in the meat, centered in that hinge right there, which that's defined by where this hinge sits this way. If I had the hinge showing with just a hairline right there, that got me that. So I'll go ahead and place this here, and I think I'll just center punch those holes, or one of them, cleco it, and then match drill through the other. I just drilled these with number 40s for right now. I'll open these up to the number 30s for the 1/8 inch rivets, but just wanted to get that in place. What I can do now is just double check now. If I set this, yeah, it's kind of hard to see, but they're in a pretty good spot. This tends to kind of wiggle around a little bit, so I guess I'll just kind of get it where I think it needs to be. But I won't do that. I won't do any of that until I get this now riveted in, drilled and riveted in place on the cowling. Then I'll place the door and handle all that business. Next thing I want to do is I want to rivet the quarter turn receptacles to the bottom side of this frame here. And I will, I'll use flush rivets, so I'll dimple those little holes. I'll flush rivet them. Hopefully the receptacles, just made me wonder, hopefully the receptacles are compatible with a countersink rivet. Let me go check them and see. Yeah, it looks like they can be. They kind of have a little, I don't know, it's pressed in there a little bit. When I stick a rivet in there, it sits flush. So the skin should sit right in there and then the rivet through that. So yeah, we should be able to get a countersink. It makes sense because these are typically used for cowlings and whatnot, and you would need that to be flush. So next step is, dimple those holes and get these riveted in place. Got my dimple die set up. My part, make sure I'm going the right way. So I'm dimpling top side down in. And let's see, get more leverage here on the grip. Give her a squeeze. I'm gonna go a little more. It wasn't quite enough. Come on, there we go. Let me just check that with this rivet. Yeah, I like that. Okay, let me dimple the other 3. If I was doing a lot of these, I would get this height set up so I could just be consistent with them all, but I'm just gonna do this by feel. Okay, one thing I noticed is it kind of flattened out my curve here. So I'm gonna come in and just hit these little areas. Okay, just noticed something. When I had mentioned that it kind of flattened out the piece, the doubler there, when I dimpled it, what's gonna happen when I put this flat part in? It's gonna be flat right there. So you know what I think I might try? I don't know if you're supposed to do this with these. You gotta be real careful because you don't really want to deform this part here too much, but I might be able to put a slight curve in this. I'm gonna try that and see what happens. That worked. I just took a pair of pliers on either end and just kind of gave this whole thing a little tweak there. And I don't know if you can make it out, but there's a slight curve in there. And then when I hold it up to my part here, you can see it follows that quite nicely versus a straight one has that gap in there. I don't know if it matters, but it just seems to me with that gap in there, by the time you tighten down your quarter turn on your door, you're gonna end up with it kind of having a little weird flat spot there. So I thought, what the heck? I'll get the other one bent up, then I can rivet them in place. Got the door held on temporarily to the frame with some little wing style quarter turns, just something I had laying around. And that's holding it in place where it likes to sit on the frame. So then I can come in here and position this door right in that opening, right where I want it. And then I can match drill, cleco, and then rivet. Now, the manual calls for 1/8 inch rivets here all the way around. I'm not gonna do that. I'm just gonna do some 3/32 rivets. I think that's gonna be sufficient. The reason being, it'll just keep a little less protrusions here, smaller heads, and I'm gonna do solid rivets. It's just a cleaner look, smaller head. I think it'll be fine. was about to start setting this in place, and one thing I noticed was this curve here is not the curve that it will be on the airplane. It's kind of spread out. So what I did, and that can affect, well, you can already see here, well, you can't really see, but this curve just isn't quite what it's supposed to be. And I want that to be as accurate to the way it's going to be on the airplane as possible, so that when I match drill this in place, it's as it should be. So what I did is I measured over here on the cowling, on the lower cowling. I was able to stick a tape measure through a little gap in there all the way through the other side. And I measured at about 1.5 inches forward of the edge of the cowling, 36 3/4 inches from the outside here to the outside there. I put a clamp on the table here, measured out 36 3/4. It's that mark. So you can see this needs to go there. And you can see how much it relaxes. So what I'm going to do is grab another clamp, put this clamp here. And it doesn't have to be, we're not splitting atoms here, just close. Put that there about 1 inch or so, 1.5 inches forward. Come in here, do the same thing. Now I'm at that curve that I like. So what I can do here is check this, and yeah, I can already see it's fitting better. Now I just need to drill it with this curve in here to cleco it. I can't very easily get a drill in here, I don't think. It's close. I might use one of my pancake offset drills. Well, you know what? I've got a 90-degree. I'll get my 90-degree DeWalt drill. I rarely use that, but this is a perfect application for this. I'll go grab that. I'll use this guy. Plenty of room in there. Be a little hard to look up in there, but okay. Yeah, that's good like that. Still looking good. Struggling. Now, 36 3/4 is where I want to be, which is right there. There we go. Again, I don't think this is necessary, but that's what I'm going to do. That's all drilled and clecoed in place. What I can do now, I've got the hinge clecoed in there, except for this piece here. So I can go ahead, and what I think I'll do is I can, if you see here, that's where I'll drill through. I'll get a block of wood in there. I definitely would drill through my fingers if I held that right now. And I think that's how I'll do that. I'll just kind of set that in place, drill through, cleco that, and then at that point, I should be able to go ahead and actuate this door up on the hinge. Well, let's see if I remove these guys. These were just temporary. It's not the greatest hinge. Oh, I see what I need to do. I need to relieve a little bit of material from the frame. It's kind of rubbing the frame a little bit right there. There's a little notch. I call it the frame, whatever this inner piece is here. It's slightly rubbing that. So I'll take care of that. It's not I mean, it's a little floppy. It's not the most wonderful hinge, but when it's closed, it ain't going anywhere. And you're only opening it to check your oil and just do a basic visual inspection. So that'll be fine. I do like the other hinges that some of the other builders were doing. They're a much nicer hinge, but I'm at the point in this build where I want to get it done. I'm not saying I'm gonna do crappy work, but I'm gonna kind of start shifting away from a lot of the custom stuff and just hammer this thing out, because I'm 2.5 years in and I said I was gonna have this done in 2 years. So I'm a little behind schedule. It's looking like it'll be 3 years. Probably have this done in 4 months. Anyways, I'm rambling. So that's what I need to do here. I'm gonna take this, uncleco this. I'll file a little bit of that material away and I should have a smooth operating hinge. This is the area that needs some removal. I need to just take it, that little hairline that's left over, I'm just gonna take that right to the edge of the opening on the cowling, and that should give me the clearance that I need. I've got all that filed and relieved, and beautiful. What's nice about this hinge, I like, is the pivot point is ahead of this line right here and below. So what happens is it kind of comes to this point and it's already making contact there and it's kind of wanting to spring up. So when you bring in your quarter turn fasteners and hold it down, this front edge is held nice and tight against the retaining ring or the frame or whatever that part's called. And then eventually I'll get the little quarter turns that the kit comes with. It comes with some 180s. And these are the 82 series Southco's, the smaller ones. And the size is a 180, which seems a little long to me, but there is gonna be, I think I'm gonna put a little spacer, a shim. Southco has all the different parts, like there's a fiber kind of a shim washer that you can put in there, and then the retaining ring. And that will kind of take up a little bit of a gap there. And whatever, if it ends up not being a 180, I've got some 160s, I think. I'll make it work, but there we go. I was about to rivet this in place, and I thought, you know what? Let me check and see if I can do a countersink rivet. I thought at first the material might have been a little too thin for me to do a countersink, but it's actually, the cowling's quite thick. So I did a test. What I did, well, you can see I added these 2 holes here. And I also added these 2 here and these 2 here. So now that I'm gonna flush rivet this, and I'm not gonna have obtrusive rivet heads all around, I went ahead and just put more holes in there. And I think that's gonna provide a nice, clean, flush look. So I need to go ahead and countersink all these and get them just flush riveted in place. For that, I can get my squeezer in there, no problem, from the inside all the way around. To attach the hinge, I've decided to use screws and lock nuts, just in case later on I need to easily service the hinge or something. Just be easier to do than drilling out rivets, and it'll look just fine. I've got these button head M3 by 0.5 screws, metric of course, you know me. So I've gone ahead and drilled these out, and I'll go ahead and install the hinge and door, and at that point, this is all complete. There we go, oil door's done. That turned out real nice. It really looks no different than if it would have been 1/8" rivets, and it's more easily serviceable now. Should I ever need to change the hinge? I don't know. Probably never need to, but I have the Southco's temporarily installed. I don't have the little retaining clips or anything put in there. Oil door is done. Overall, it turned out really good. Little bit of an extra gap over here that when I was filing away, With the sanding drum, I went heavy by maybe an extra 20 thousandths there, but overall, it's pretty good. And what I may actually end up having to do is file away the door just a little bit when I get paint. I don't know how paint's going to affect some of this fit right here. Might be a little tight. Not a problem. I can kind of work the door a little bit if I need to. So there we go. Oil door complete. That means cowling is pretty much done. There's just a few other little trimmings and filings I need to do up around the front inlet area. But I can't think of anything else that cowling needs as far as like construction goes and building. It's just finishing now. All right, I've got the cowling kind of temporarily installed in place with just a few screws. I wanted to check the alignment of the door versus the oil filler. So, and I've got I did put the little winged South Co's on there instead of the Phillips. With the Phillips, you got to have a screwdriver handy on you. I know you'll have one's probably going to be in your fuel sampler, like they've all got the little Phillips tip, but I just like being able to walk up to this, pop the door and look into it without having to have a tool. So I did the wing style. The only downside to these is the orientation of them is like against the airflow. I wish they could be this way. I don't think you can get these 90 degrees different, or the nut plate or the receptacles. I guess I'll look and see. I just think you get what you get there, but it's no big deal. Let me open this up and we'll see what the alignment looks like right there. And if you pull this, I will say one thing, it's awfully close to the corner there. I feel like if this thing would have been another 3/4 of an inch down, I mean, you can make it work, but if you're getting a funnel or anything in there, it is quite close, but it's no big deal. It'll work. Had I known that, I would have probably shifted this over just a little bit. They had it at 12 inches from the center, maybe 12 3/4. I'd have had to put a little more curve in this because we start to get into a little bit more of a radius here, but no big deal. It is what it is. Get these in here. This one, there we go. And my screws there. So there we go. I like it.